Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the Community Development and Transportation Committee for January 25th, 2022. I certainly want to acknowledge the council members who are present. Mayor Wilson, unable to be here, but certainly I'm believing that he's watching. And wanted to acknowledge, of course, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member Mike Palermo, Council Member Peter Vanstrom, Council Member Lee Hills, and Council Member, William Morthland. And thank everybody who is here, who's watching online, and who is present in the room this evening. The purpose of committee meetings are for city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as the chair of these committee meetings, and this is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. And therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7:00 p.m. in city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month, and then on the fifth Monday of each month in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage in our online platforms, and if you have any questions or need information regarding any matter, our staff is available to provide that information to you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Community Development and Transportation Committee meeting for December 15th, 2021. I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Council Member Hall. We have a second? Second by Council Member Palermo. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. Unanimous. The second item we have on the agenda under Community Development is consideration of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code regarding the RM2 residential multifamily and RM3 residential multifamily zoning districts. Jackie Dybel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This on the screen is, I wanted to show you this before we got started, is the Unified Development Code that's on Municode. So this is the section we'll be talking about this evening, 13.4.3, letter D. As you can see, currently it indicates no amendment to the official zoning map for the Unified Development Code shall be made, and no applications for the official UDC map amendments shall be accepted by the city involving a request to rezone in the future development map designation of suburban residential to the following zoning districts. And the districts listed are RS6, RS4, RCC, and RTH. I wanted to show you that first before I got started in with the PowerPoint. So the proposed changes are in section 13.4.3, who can submit an application. And as I stated before, it's in paragraph D. Our changes are going to include renumbering the section and also adding a second paragraph. So I just read this out of the code, which is in Municode here. So what we're going to be doing here is changing this. Since this is the only paragraph in section D right now, and we'll be adding a second paragraph, the first change will be adding a number 1 to this, and then adding A, B, C, and D to the sections below. And I wanted to stress that currently it says suburban residential. Since we're looking at this section, I wanted to also address with the 2040 comprehensive plan that was adopted last year, we now have 4 classifications for residential. We have estate and suburban, which have always been in there. We also now have a neighborhood residential and active neighborhoods. So while we're going through here, we didn't know if you wanted to add those as well in this paragraph. So that's something that we'll be talking about tonight. Changes to be considered is what I just indicated, to add the neighborhood residential and active neighborhood as new character areas in the first paragraph. And then the second paragraph that would be added would be all new language to state that no amendment to the official zoning map for the UDC shall be made, and no applications for this official zoning map amendment shall be accepted by the city involving a request to rezone to the following zoning districts, RM2 and RM3. And these are both the residential multifamily zoning classifications. And staff recommends approval of this text amendment to be voted to move forward for initiation.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. And Ms. Abel, thank you for presenting this, and I appreciate you showing not only the PowerPoint that you have, but also just showing the real, actual language and content in there. So first off, I certainly support staff's recommendation and will be supporting tonight moving this to initiation. And a couple things I just want to clarify is first of all, if this committee chooses to move this to initiation, then that means this is the first of 4 times this will be in front of council. So basically, the process is at committee, something's moved forward for initiation. So at a council meeting, there would then be an initiation at a council meeting, and this council would choose to vote whether to initiate it or not. If that's approved, it would go to Planning Commission, where this would be presented again, and then it would come back to council for a first reading to either be approved or denied or updated, and then a second reading. And once the second reading occurs, so that 4th public meeting that I'm describing with council, that's what would actually update the code. And to clarify on what this is doing right here for this page right here, again, what this is doing is it is not having an impact on any mixed-use zonings or any zonings that have residential and commercial mixed-use buildings, et cetera. This is just addressing these zonings that are purely standalone apartment zonings. This is something that is going to get us a little more in line with Alpharetta zoning and how they have things set up. And so I'm certainly supporting this. That being said, Ms. Dybel, based on what you said earlier, so again, I agree with this language as written. If we could go back here, I would think, so are there 4? Is it estate residential, suburban residential, neighborhood residential, and active? Are those the 4?
Those are the 4, yes.
Because I would think we'd want to add these character areas to that number 1, as well as estate residential also. And then I think the one that would be in question, I lean towards thinking having all 4 for right now, being included here to be brought to initiation. The one thing that I think we would look at would be, what is the densest residential? Is that active?
Active.
So I think the one we'd look at is if active residential should be excluded or certain would be allowed to be requested within active residential. But I would think we would definitely want estate, suburban, and neighborhood to be written for what's brought to initiation.
Okay.
I thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Any further comments or questions from members of the council? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a motion to move this item forward and initiate.
So in that case, I will motion to move this to initiation with the update of for this screen right here to include the 4 residential zoning districts.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Palermo, a second from Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All right, thank you. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the next item that we have on the agenda, item number 3, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to authorize execution of a task order in an amount not to exceed $134,100 with the city's on-call consultant, Van Ays, Hangen, Rustlin Incorporated, for a corridor study of Grimes Bridge Road. Mr. Skalski.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, Council, Mayor Pro Tem. So this is a initiation of a corridor study that we have talked about for some time. I believe it was initially partially funded in 2021 and we received the remainder of that funding in the 2022 budget. And this would be looking at the concept design, including public involvement for intersection improvements along Oxbow, along Grimesbridge Road from Oxbow to Dogwood, and it'll also consider pedestrian and bicycle improvements along that section. That's basically the section in red that's highlighted on the screen. This is just the first step in kicking off a major project, which is to get a concept together and vet it with the public, and that's what we're asking for your approval tonight. This is a contract with one of our standby engineers. We retain them every 3 years and rotate assignments periodically. This company, we refer to them as VHB for obvious reasons. It's easier for me to get out. And they've done good work, and we thought they were well suited for this particular project. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about the project. Yes?
Yes, Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you. So this actually is a very important update that we're going to look at doing, and the reason being is because the express lanes, when we have a new bridge going over 400 and connecting to the express lanes, there definitely is a potential impact on the many residents that live here. My big concern is, as I'm reading it, and when I hear just intersection improvement and operational improvements, et cetera, my concern is the engineers that we hire, they might just be focused on their way of improving is just creating more flow through and more, and that is absolutely not the goal. So ultimately, I do support this dollar request. I do support and what I'd see is really an action plan for this area. But I think it's absolutely crucial that we are documenting what the goal is, and the goal is to protect the safety and the quality of life for those many residents that live here, knowing that there's the potential for increased traffic because of the express lanes, and knowing that our goal is not being a cut through, but instead somewhere where these people have a safe and high quality of life. So that'd be my concern. I don't know what the right wording is. That's where I'll look to this council and to staff, but I just wanted to kind of share my initial thoughts.
Okay, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Yes, I echo what Mayor Pro Tem Palermo today said. I believe that this was initiated as a result of a request because of the managed lanes that were coming with basically the sole purpose to help mitigate the results of any of that. So I think it's really, really important that that's a focus of this.
And I apologize for not mentioning that. It is specifically called out in the item, but I glossed over that. It was the motivation for the project in the first place, and I appreciate that being brought to everyone's attention.
All right, Councilmember Hills.
Yes, I noticed that the next item on the agenda is, would connect to this area, correct? Is that being taken into consideration as well? I mean, that touches the next area on Riverside, backing up the southern portion of Dogwood.
We will actually touch on that a bit with the next item, which is a little further along because we had done some concept work on the Riverside project, so we'll touch on how those two interface on the next item.
I didn't mean to
Yes,
put
you're absolutely correct.
the cart before the horse, but I know that'll also impact this, what's going on the Riverside. The next item can impact this in the study. So are these folks with this consultant firm, are they aware of the other that's in progress?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And we will make sure that they're coordinated on the connection points. And I meant to introduce, Greg Nichols, who's our engineering division manager, is here to kind of guide the slides tonight, and he'll be talking through the concept on the next project with you.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Hey, looking at the cost breakdown of this, we see where we've got a concept preparation, we've got environmental screening, and then something called special studies. What is the special studies?
In this case, can you elaborate on special studies for this particular project? Greg? I'm not
Yes.
sure that I can.
Yeah, so the special studies that's shown in there for this particular project, so we have allocated, I think, at least 3 public meetings that's in the public outreach scope. And then the special studies that's additional money to be directed by staff if needed, if we need additional public meetings, or if there's any additional information that the consultant needs, that money would be available to them.
So since in responding to potential changes that may be directed during the public input and concept development, is that
Yeah.
fair? If it's anything outside of the scope that's initially intended?
So would it be safe to say that we potentially could get this report for less, or are we spending this money?
I think it's fair to say we could get it for less.
Yep.
And one of the things, that's actually brings up a good point. I will mention this term probably again, but we're going to be emphasizing more of a design to budget approach with our consultants. And that's not just focusing on this budget as much as the overall project budget that we have in mind or have set in the T-SPLOST program. So hopefully that will be making tougher choices come up earlier in our thought process and hopefully being resolved.
Councilmember Palermo.
So, and Councilman Morthland, thank you for bringing that up because I think you've adjusted my viewpoint on the dollar amount I support. But I'll get into that in a second. So I guess first off, you mentioned that you have multiple on-call consultants that you use and you kind of shuffle between them. Of the on-call consultants, are you confident that this is the one that would do the best job, knowing that our goal is not to make it more efficient for more cars to be cutting through here, and instead it's for the how do we slow down traffic and protect the quality of life for the many Roswell residents here? Do you feel this consultant is the best or one of the best available for that?
Greg, I'm going to defer to you as you know VHB a little better than I do, but I would say given the nature of the start of the study, that should have been our criteria in selecting that firm for this assignment.
Yeah, VHB they're actually one of our longest standing on-calls. They've been an on-call ever since I've been on staff for the past 8.5 years. They've done a lot of projects throughout the city, but I'm confident in their ability to meet the intent and the goal of this project.
Okay. Thank you. So that was number one. I've got 2 more things. So the second one is, I mean, I lean towards feeling that the intent is pretty clear, and the fact that you're already including public input as well as other. If I'm understanding correctly, that 25,000 is separate from the public input and other things that you're already planning. It's more of a just in case you want more of the meetings. I lean towards thinking, I guess something that I feel the city has historically done is there's often been, certainly we obviously have a very famous project that obviously was very, had a lot of cost overruns, but at the same time, there's a lot of other projects I could point to where there's always the extra money in there, and I'd lean towards not wanting to approve that, but instead have it $25,000 less, and just knowing that you could always come back. I'll certainly leave it to this committee and defer to this committee if they prefer to include that $25,000 or remove it. But again, my preference would be to remove it, and if there be a clear public need, then we could always discuss adding it back. So that was my item number 2. And then finally is I'd support moving this to council to be voted on as long as what's brought to council does have a very clear intent that there's no way that VHB could misinterpret our thing, because I have full confidence in staff here, knowing what our intent is. But again, I just have the concern that they just read this and their view of doing improvements is just making it safer and easier for more cars to go faster, which is the exact opposite. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure it's Roswell residents that are benefiting and not the cut through from other counties.
So,
Councilmember Vanstrom, please.
Just to take that a step further, can we add the phrase traffic calming into as one of the goals of this project?
absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Good note. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Before I lose my train of thought, I would just say absolutely we can address what we just talked about in terms of the intent in the item that we bring to full council. Regarding the budget, I would just suggest one other way that we have done this in the past would be to award a lower amount to the consultant contract at the present time, but I would request, it's already funded in the project budget for $226,000. I would ask that that money be at least available without coming back through the committee approval and council process, particularly because it's $25,000 and as a change order, I'm not sure if we would have to go through that exercise. Ryan's saying no, so either way, then it's fine, I guess. My preference would be the other, but I understand.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Just to follow up on that, we were on the same train of thought. My question or suggestion would be that this has already been funded in our budgets, and if you did award a lower amount, any differences, if we could designate that those differences, instead of going back into general fund or capital fund, be allocated to improvements in this area beyond whatever the project is, or go towards just this sector.
Any further comments at this time? I would make one suggestion if the council is in agreement. As noted by Councilmember Hills, the next item is a discussion item, but somewhat related to this particular agenda item. And if we would like to hear that item first, and then you make your decision in terms of moving forward with a motion on item number 3, if that's in agreement with council. You good? Okay, all right. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
One last thing, and forgive my ignorance here. How is this communicated for the community input meetings? I've talked to several residents in the area that are concerned about the outcome. How is that communicated?
That's a very good question. We have a lot of different outreach methods, and I don't believe Lavanya is here, but I'll give you a quick thumbnail. We do issue public information notices. This is going to be in-person meetings, and we also post
And online.
and virtual. So in terms of the outreach effort, I'm not sure I know the mechanics of how that technically works.
Yeah, I mean, it'll go through the city's website, city's Facebook page. For this, something like this, we would probably actually print off some signs and have them posted in this area as well for the residents. And it would probably have like a QR code, and you can go to the city's webpage and everything. We haven't ironed out all those details yet, but that'll be something we'll be working with the consultant and our in-house communications people.
I want to be sure we're communicating with them well, because the ones I've spoken to feel maybe disenfranchised, that maybe just Heatherton and one other neighborhood, Pembroke, I believe, were given written notice. I'm not here to abuse anybody, but I just want to say that there are people that don't feel like they've been communicated to, and I'd love to see that with an uptick on that, so that people feel like, I mean, if they don't come to the meeting, that's on the residents, but just so they feel like they've had a voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. All right, with that, since the council is amenable, we'll discuss item number 4 first, since there is a nexus between these two items, and then come back to item number 3 for a potential motion.
So while Greg is getting this up, this one is a similar project. It's actually the first project that we began some corridor concept work on early. And this has included some outreach, and we have a concept, which is more or less the deliverable that we would be coming back with on the other project, along with some feedback from the public outreach efforts. And I'm going to turn it over to Greg and let you walk through the concept with mayor and council, and we'll be happy to stop at any point along the corridor. I held this particular one up, which had been started last year, until the new council was in place, and we wanted to get you a status report of where we are. And take it away, Greg.
Okay.
That's not a good start.
Okay. I guess we'll leave it here.
Try using the percentages, and just, it'll go a little bit bigger.
The packet, you make a smaller version.
Nope,
with a
okay.
Alright.
So hopefully that's going to be visible.
We'll start here. So the Riverside Road project, the intent is for it to be a complete street project and to accommodate all users, automobiles, bicycles, and pedestrians. And right now, the current concept is to provide bike lanes and a continuous multi-use trail on the south side of Riverside, and then a sidewalk on the north side to connect the neighborhoods to the south side with the trails and the parks on the south side. The project starts at Riverside Park here on the west side, and the project ends really at Old Alabama and Riverside right here just east of 400. Kind of moving from west to east. Right now we're showing two mini roundabouts, one right here at the proposed A-San project, and I think that's Taman Drive on the other side. And then the other mini roundabout just west of there is at the St. Andrew Catholic Church exit, and it connects with the other leg on the north side there. And then we also have right now we're showing two medians for traffic calming purposes, kind of leading into the river corridor here between Dogwood here and the Riverside Park. You kind of see we're showing some orange. If I could zoom in, the orange line here on the south side, that's the multi-use trail. You may notice that it stops here and does not continue on. That is due to the existing multi-use trail that already is in place today, as well as some of the proposed improvements that Recreation and Parks has kind of in this area right here. And then I know there's been a little bit of question, our project does propose to go to Old Alabama, and it is touching Dogwood. There aren't any major improvements shown right now at Dogwood or Old Alabama. Our consultant, Michael Baker, has looked at both intersections. They've done some traffic analysis, and they actually operate pretty well as it is today. To do some improvements at those two intersections would be significant impacts, to this area, as well as, the thought is if we make those improvements, it's actually going to push more cars faster down through this corridor, which is something we don't want to do. So by not improving these intersections, it is a little bit of a traffic calming measure to reduce, how many vehicles we're pushing down through this corridor at one time. So that's kind of the overall of the project. And as Dan said, we'd be happy to walk through anything else or answer any questions you guys have.
Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Those traffic circle roundabouts, is that part of the Gateway project as well, or is that an entirely different
So the Gateway project stops at Riverside Park, so that's all west of Riverside Park. These are mini roundabouts, so they're smaller. These would be part of the Riverside project.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Got a couple of questions, and then a discussion point. Currently, do cars park on Riverside Drive at all on the north or south side or east or west side? Do they accommodate parking? And I guess with the sidewalks, we'll lose that parking. I just don't remember.
I believe there is some parking up in this area that does happen today,
Jeff's shaking his head no, just for.
but I don't think we allow parking.
Oh, so it's not allowed.
Yeah, Mr. Leatherman? Can you
Sorry,
provide some insight?
Yeah, Jeff Leatherman, sorry to jump in. Where we're pointing up there at the kind of the Don White parking lot, any parking that's along the road on the south side, would be considered rogue parking. Occasionally, we do have some law enforcement issues in that area, but it's not designated parking along the road in that section, if that's what you're asking.
That was my question.
Yeah,
If we
so-
were losing any designated parking?
No designated parking, and most of the parking on the north side of the road is restricted by sign or just by existing curb and vegetation as well. And there's also a fairly decent drainage ditch that runs along that section of the road that prohibits parking just naturally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Councilmember Palermo.
Actually, while Mr. Leatherman's still
Sorry,
here.
did you have I'm sorry. Councilmember Hall, do you
I
have another?
apologize.
No, I'll come back. Go
Sure.
ahead. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, while Mr. Leatherman's still here, are there impacts related to the river master plan with this? Is there anything that this positively or negatively impacts how the current river master plan is currently designed?
So no positive or negative impacts. The roundabout that is coordinated at the entrance of ASAN, which would be, if you're working from left to right, the second roundabout there, that's been coordinated with the design efforts on the ASAN property itself to ensure that the parking and the queuing is appropriate, both on the park side, but then also for the traffic flow in the road. So we've been coordinated with RDOT on those elements. And in the packet, if you look, you can actually kind of see the white outline of the ASAN design, which was at about probably the 90% version of the drawing. So that's all been coordinated, and we've got some contingency plans in place for kind of who goes first. So if ASAN goes first, then we know what we're doing, and then if the road goes in first, then we know how to manage that as well.
So I have some more questions, but I'll wait till after Councilmember Hall's questions.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Mine was going to be a discussion point, as we say that we're not going to look at an intersection improvement, but yet we're looking at, that is the connection to the Grimes Bridge projects. And I just want to clarify, when we say we're not looking at improving the intersection, that the intent is we're not planning on changing the design of that intersection versus improvements that could be aesthetic that would connect the two. I just would like that clarification.
Correct, yeah. The proposal right now is to basically not drop in a multi-lane roundabout at that intersection, but there is still going to be some coordination. As we kind of talked about the Dogwood Grimes Bridge project. This project, the Riverside project, did come. It's obviously, it started a little bit before the other project. So now, once we get VHB on board, if the contract is approved at a mayor and council meeting, then we'll get VHB and Michael Baker together, and we'll have to have some coordination, to see where each other's projects stops and starts right there. Because we're still not sure what side the multi-use trail is going to be on, either on going up Dogwood. We have an idea, but we'll have to flush that out during the concept for that project.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So a couple different things. So first of all, those medians, those are raised medians for traffic calming?
Yes.
Excellent. So definitely big fan of those. Really looking forward to when the ones will be built onto Holcomb Bridge Road, which we had talked about, as well as on King Road next to by the high school. So definitely glad to see them here as well for traffic calming purposes. And then, Greg, you said something that I was glad to hear you say too, mentioning regarding Dogwood. Not sure yet what side the multi-use trail would be. I'm certainly a big advocate of always looking at both sides, both for practicality as well as potentially if one side has major cost savings over the other side. And so I think here I would think on the south side, the multi-use trail makes sense, but just as a form of habit, would like to kind of ask, would there be any, major cost savings or practicality or other benefits of it being on the north side? And part of why I'm asking is A, obviously I was looking for large cost savings, but B, I do run here a lot where I often use multi-use trails within Riverside Park and then going west, et cetera. But just figured I'd ask if that's something you've looked at and thought about for everyone.
So I think the main thought on this is, right now there is a multi-use trail, that runs along the south side up to this point, and then it does get kind of narrow and it almost drops off, here in front of the church property. But then the multi-use trail picks back up right here and goes all the way, to Willio. So, if we could fill this gap and put in this multi-use trail, I mean, that's a large length for continuous multi-use trail.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that, because the reason I was asking, I guess I wasn't sure until you used the laser pointer. I guess part of my concern was, did you have a multi-use trail 10 feet away from a different multi-use trail? But instead I'm seeing you actually just have it in between the gaps.
Correct, yeah. We had talked about it, if we were gonna, yeah, we don't want two multi-use trails within 50 feet. It just doesn't make sense, down on that side, so.
Excellent. And then now these, if I remember correctly, it seemed the mini roundabout on North Coleman, that was not a significant cost from a financial standpoint. I want to say, was it around 100,000, give or take?
Yeah, I think it was around 150.
Around 150, okay.
Yeah.
So would the expectation be that these also would be low cost, or is there the chance one of them would be actually just a higher or more complex one?
Yeah, so these are a little bit different because these have all four legs.
True.
And we are doing a little bit more deflection, and there's just a little bit more geometry kind of to both of these than what the North Coleman is. Just we've got a little bit more space to deal with right here, and the speeds, I think the speeds along Riverside are, maybe a little bit higher than what we'd see on North Coleman.
And if I could just make one comment, just based on market conditions alone, I can assure you that these will be more expensive.
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
And what's the key? So you walked through it. It certainly made sense for the locations you chose, given the four entrances to it. But what's the key benefit of having it like that versus a stoplight or a four-way stop or whatnot?
So as far as the roundabout, a four-way stop in this area would probably lead to some significant congestion. One of the big drivers for these two mini roundabouts is the left turn lanes. It's the left turns from these subdivisions, and we feel that the mini roundabouts would be a safe alternative for those.
And in my opinion, I'm not a traffic expert, but here the left turns for the residents out of those subdivisions was one of the major issues. And honestly, if we don't clear the traffic, even at a four-way stop, I still think that's going to be very problematic for folks to get through there.
And then, so is the challenge, so someone's trying to take a left out of one of those neighborhoods and just cars are going too fast and it's unsafe for them to take that left?
Yes, it's a safety issue today.
Thank you for the clarification.
Looking at the map here, I see your two roundabouts, and if you continue going towards away from the roundabout, so on the second roundabout to the right, am I missing a crosswalk that goes into that neighborhood? Looks like we have a crosswalk down the way that connects to Woods, but
Are you saying right
that
here?
right there, is there a crosswalk there or is there not a crosswalk?
Right now, we are not showing a crosswalk.
And then to the right, you do have a crosswalk that
crosswalk
leads
would
into
be-
Woods.
And I think that's, because the trail kind of, it's a little hard to see. The multi-use trail kind of comes away from the road in this area. Because I think there is some kind of topography challenges right in here. I mean, the crosswalk, that's something we could still look at. I mean, it could potentially be here.
And
That's something we could look at, if that's a concern.
if we're looking at traffic calming and slowing traffic down, adding an extra crosswalk, I couldn't see how that would be a problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Any further comments or questions on this particular item from the council? Okay, and this is a discussion item, correct? All right,
Yes, sir.
all right. And so with that information, we'll move back to item number 3, which was the consideration on the task order, and would certainly entertain a motion for that particular item. All right, yes, Councilmember Palermo?
Motion to move this forward to council with staff updating the clear intent around traffic calming, et cetera, due to the upcoming express lanes.
All right, thank you, sir. Yes. Second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And so we'll move on to item number 5, which is consideration to accept the fiscal year 2022 road resurfacing list and award a change order to Bartow Paving Company in the amount of $2,298,019. Yes, Mr. Skowski.
So this is part of our update every year in terms of providing a resurfacing list for the coming year. And in this particular item, we also have the opportunity to change order some favorable unit prices with our current paving contractor, Bartow Paving, and use some of that money this spring at costs that we think are going to be very attractive relative to the next time we compete that repaving contract. So the funding is available and a list of the proposed roads are included, which we are required to file also at this point for the current year. And we'd like to change order the available funding in our project account to Bartow Paving as part of this item as well. In your package, you have a map showing the proposed resurfacing projects. If anyone has any questions, we'll be happy to address them. We can also show you what we have accomplished this year with the prior 5.7 or so million that's been encumbered. Be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. For the benefit of our newer council members, could you maybe give a little bit of background as to how these lists are determined and the methodology and why we see so many cul-de-sacs perhaps this time around versus through streets?
Sure, be happy to do that. And this is a brief excerpt from some of the information that we provided back about 2 years ago. Joe Vitale, who's here in the audience, can answer any tough questions about our resurfacing program. It's his baby. If you go to the next slide, this talks about the various funds that we use and the approximate time frame, but for the most part, roads are on a roughly 15-year kind of lifespan. If you go to the next, I'll do it, never mind, sorry. We've had some changes in our funding over time, and this just highlights some of the changes that we had during some tighter budget years. And the level that we've ended up settling on, this is again, during one of those years when we were a little down on funding, it didn't look too favorable for us, but we did make an attempt to get that back caught up. And one of the metrics that we use is what we call a PCI score. That's our pavement condition index, and it has been dropping. This covers a lot of information, but the basic message of this is that the red lines were going up for the city of Roswell, and we needed to change that. And this talks a little bit about the pavement life cycle in general and gets you to that roughly 15-year time frame when roads start to deteriorate rather quickly. After that point, there's an initial, drop. They tend to level off, and then they tend to go downhill quickly if they're not maintained and resurfaced. So we do a couple of different techniques for doing that, and this is sort of Joe's area of expertise. But mostly we do rejuvenation and full repaving. And I want to get to our target level, which we're getting a little closer to because of the investment we made this past year. This is actually gives you an interesting history, but we're kind of following the green line. We didn't quite do as much catch-up work as is shown in this curve. And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but we took out a loan and we spent a little bit more in the last year than is normal. We'd like to get to a level where we're spending a similar amount every year in the $3 to $4 million range. $4 million is really our target. And that was really the conclusion and recommendations to council at that point in time. And I'm happy to say that we did do a lot of catch-up work this last year, and this change order will kind of help get us close to that $8 million catch-up target that we had set a couple of years ago. And we do adjust this based on actual condition assessment work that's done every year in the city, looking at all of the roads. So did I address the background question?
Yes, Councilmember Hall?
One more thing, if you could tell us how how the PCI score comes to be. How is that score arrived at?
Joe, I think I'm going to need you to take that one on. It is a visual and inspection index that's done.
So there's some subjectivity in that number?
Some, but there are some criteria to it, and there are also some other ways of getting it done. But would you explain
Yeah, so
how the
our-
PCIs are determined?
Yeah, so our inspectors inspect the roadways every year. Not all of them, we can't possibly inspect every road every year. That information, we use a program called Micropaver, which is the program that actually calculates the PCIs, or the paving condition index, based on what we see on the ground, and we measure it on the ground. That's how that comes about. So from there, we generate the list of roads that are requiring maintenance before that curve starts to drop drastically. It's what we want to try to catch them at the latest. So that's how we come up with that list. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
And I want to apologize because Joe actually had a slide in the old presentation that talked about the PCI index. And I pulled it because I was trying to shorten it up for today's discussion. So.
No, I understood that. There is a software that they use, and the inspector does go out and visually, make some determinations as well, in addition to any measurements of cracks, so.
Exactly. It is a visual, we do a visual inspection.
So.
Other municipalities, or especially larger, of course, they can't possibly do that. They use fancier equipment, but we're able to still do visual inspections and actual measurements, and that's how we come up with the number.
Okay.
It also helps us, our inspectors, know the roads better, and they know which roads really need to be worked on.
Thank you.
So the PCI is essentially a grading system that you utilize.
Yes,
to
and it's
determine which
an
roads-
industry-wide
Right.
system everybody uses.
Right, helps you determine which roads are in most need of
Exactly.
repair and or
What
maintenance.
varies is what system you use to connect to the PCI. We use one program, Alfreda may use a different one, and so on, but we all use the same method.
And for the For the viewing public, the acronym of PCI is, or PSI?
Pavement Condition Index.
Thank you. Paving Condition Index. Okay,
It's an index
Thank you.
between 0 and 100.
right, okay,
It's a wide range.
all right.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Any further questions of council? Yes, Councilman Northland.
I'm gonna ask a question because I honestly don't know, but for a residence need, is there a way that we have a program set up within the Department of Transportation where they can start sending in pictures and say, hey, the front end of our road is in disrepair, would you mind coming out and looking at it? And is there a tracking mechanism that we can put in place as compared to them emailing city council members and then we have to do it all? If that could go straight to the transportation department, then we can how that goes.
Yeah, there actually is nothing that's sort of specific to the pavement condition program, but we do have a system now that allows any resident to use a phone app to send us a picture of any problem in the city, whether it's a broken piece of sidewalk, curb and gutter, or littering or a nuisance type problem. And they can absolutely do that, and we encourage folks to do that because it does help us quite a bit if we have contact information who may know a little bit more about the particular issue, and that usually comes in with those. The system we use is really a customer request information system that's a mobile-based app, and folks can take a picture and send us anything anywhere in the city, and that'll go directly to the appropriate department, or we'll route it if it's, accidentally gotten turned in as a sinkhole and it's a pothole or something. So,
Does that generate a work order? Does that generate anything?
yes. So we're working on actually the work order system right now in transportation. I think it's been used in rec and parks and other departments for a couple of years, and it's just about there.
And if I could say, we're also working with GIS to integrate all of this in our mapping system. So residents will be able to access some of that information directly on the maps. And I don't know about requesting resurfacing. We could probably incorporate that. We're still working with them on that.
Sure. And that's, the reason I ask that is because I look at this map and I see the project that we have scheduled to go, and then other people who find their foothold in the city that are not part of this, that's what I'm trying to give them a voice on.
Right.
Thanks.
Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
And just, since I've never seen this app, where do we find this magical app, and how do we direct residents to where?
If you go to the App Store, it's actually City of Roswell app. If you just go to either the Apple. Yep.
Thank you for that. And also, I assume periodically, we probably provide information out to the general public about acquiring or that app. I think maybe we'll work with our community relations staff to kind of highlight the app on our main page, and that would hopefully generate a new group of citizens who would acquire that app and have full use of access to the work situation that Dan mentioned. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
And just to echo your point, it really does facilitate getting the work done, and because we can get it, the proper information of where it is and get it to the right people who can respond quicker. So customers that do use the app tend to appreciate the speed that it adds to just responding to their concerns.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So what kind of visibility is there into the PCI scores? And the reason I bring that up is actually I did a post on my Mike for Roswell Facebook page yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to kind of give any responses, but one of the people brought up paving, and they brought up, I believe it was Thompson Place, concerns around that. And then obviously through the actual data, that's not shown as one of the largest needs. is there some visibility into see if a resident, like Councilman Morthland brought up, you know, if a resident is saying, hey, this street really needs it, you know, it needs it more than anywhere else, the opportunity to actually be able to see, well, actually, even though that one's bad, here's the score of, here's an example, you know, why this is worse. Is there any type of visibility into that?
I'm going to take a quick stab at that and let Joe comment, but yes and no. We keep records on the inspections and the paving scores that are done every year. When it comes time to actually assign paving crews, there is always new information when the paver gets out and begins to do work. And there's also issues that I would call our grouping and efficiency of using a contractor. So when we're in an area, it takes a certain amount of mobilization costs to get the contractor out to an area. And so we try to do other roads that are close and other sections of roads that are in that area if they're close to being done. And part of it's because somebody sees the street next to them, or they stop around the corner instead of doing a small cul-de-sac with 6 houses that's about the same condition but not quite as bad on the index. So that we defer a lot to Joe and the paving contractor and what they discover in the field, because occasionally they will discover conditions that require some additional work, and that may affect the amount of funding that we have. So those kind of field judgments are based on when they get out there and determine if there's other base or repair work that needs to be done more than just simple repaving.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Just 2 things. And first question is, isn't this available on the city website, all the streets and all the scores, the most updated one?
Not the entire data, no.
It's,
Yeah, that's why we're working with GIS, so you would be able to access the map and see what the condition of your road is.
when I was liaison to transportation a couple of years ago, I thought there was a list that was,
There is a list, but it's not published.
oh, it's just not published, but it could be published. I
Yeah,
mean,
we
there
have
would
a
be no
list.
reason for it to,
We
okay.
have a list not only of what the latest ratings are, but past ratings and future up to 12, 15 years, I think. We project
And,
to give us an idea of what may happen 5 years, 10 years from now, although it's just a projection, but we do keep that list.
okay, and then just feedback, because I got this feedback, I continually get this feedback. When you do go into neighborhoods, and I understand the funding question, but you have a neighborhood like Chickering where I live, it's just easy, where they'll just do half the neighborhood, half the streets, come in and pave one section and then leave the others, and it actually isn't very aesthetically, looks not very nice for the neighborhood, at least while the paving is still dark and new. If you all consider that when you're grouping and looking at funding, I think residents would appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that goes to what Dan just mentioned. Paving requires a significant amount of heavy equipment and significant amount of labor. So mobilizing those crews one place to another is very expensive. So we at least I now try to concentrate in one area. When we're in one area, we try to catch every road possible. So that has happened in the past, and I don't consider that to be feasible. But so we try to do that. But of course, there are other situations. There may be work being done on some roads, a water line break or something to that effect. That makes us having to, abandon some areas. But typically, we try to concentrate in one area and do as much as we can in that area because it saves us money.
Okay. Any other comments from the council? Questions? All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to move this item forward.
Make a motion to move it forward.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Morthland.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that then does conclude the items on the Community Development and Transportation Committee agenda. And with that, I will entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion to adjourn, second by motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Palermo. All in favor? Thank you so much. Everyone have a good evening. All right.